So, everybody, welcome to my first live Facebook chat. I am so happy that you are able to join me. I am going to be looking at all of your comments and trying to answer your questions. If you have, and hopefully you'll have, you don't have to wait for me to speak, but I am going to start with a little something. I really view these months as the months the earth stood still. Remember that old movie in the 50s, The Day the Earth Stood Still? That's what it feels like for many of us. The earth literally is still right now. We are beginning to open up, but not quite. And I don't want to repeat all the advice that's been given by all the pundits, the media, the talking heads, and especially the experts, because you've heard it all. In fact, we've heard it ad infinitum. What I want to do, though, is approach a way that we can look at this in possibly a different manner. And I'll tell you what sparked the original thought. When I was talking on one of my YouTube chats about the fact that my prostate had cancer, as I like to say, rather than I have it, I received a number of people that were commenting how they also met that challenge. But I have to let you know that I never felt it as a challenge. I've always felt it as an adventure. A challenge is actually it's a contest, basically. That's what a challenge is. It's a contest. In fact, one of the first ways it was ever used is I challenge you to a duel. An adventure, however, is very unusual and exciting. You don't necessarily know where it's going to take you. And I wanted to approach my personal battles with the fact that they were adventures, that everything I was about to go on was an adventure. And I think that's going to be the key on how we get through this particular time of our lives. If we look at it as a challenge, it almost has a negative connotation already associated with it. But an adventure, that's always enriching and enlightening. And I look at that as the way we need to behave as individuals, and the more we as individuals incorporate the notion that this is an adventure, the more the society incorporates it as an adventure. And with that in mind, there's also a personal level. And I look at that as two different things as well. Some people like to look at things as a journey. And I like to look at them as a quest. It's not just semantics. A journey, you have a destination. It's a particular destination that you're traveling towards or going to, while a quest is more of a search. It's a search for something internal that makes you whole, that gives you purpose, that allows you to live life, as the great John Wooden said, to be successful is to be the best that you can be. And I believe that if we look at life as an adventure, and that we look at our personal ambitions as a quest, that allows us to live the lives we are most capable of living and to be the best that we can by doing so. Now, what's interesting, when I had John Wooden on my original show, he shared something with me off the record that I thought was fascinating. And it relates again to how we use words and how we think about things and how those things can affect us. Many of you are very familiar with his pyramid. It's his pyramid of success. And he has cornerstones, he has a foundation. You should really check it out. You can just Google it and look at John Wooden's Pyramid for Success. And one of the key things that made me also change from things being a challenge to an adventure and from a journey to a quest was something he told me that he changed in his original pyramid. In his original pyramid, one of the keystones that held the pyramid together was the word willingness. If you had the will, you could achieve anything. And as he himself matured, and he was old when he wrote this, but he still always was searching for wisdom. He was always a true teacher, always teaching and always learning. And he replaced the block that said willingness with the words enthusiasm. That's a very different term. To do things with enthusiasm. Anyone can gather up the willpower to do something, but to do it with enthusiasm, that's a whole new way of looking at it. And if you look at the greats on any level, take them from science to sports, when Einstein was blocked in his thinking, he didn't push himself. He actually grabbed his violin and began to play because he needed to hear his music so that he can be enthused to keep searching. Same thing with Michael Jordan, the great basketball player. It wasn't until, believe it or not, 7 years after he played that Phil Jackson brought on a new center. And that center was not as pressurized as Michael was. And it also relaxed the team and allowed Michael to play with more enthusiasm. Even as great as he was prior to it, he became a greater leader and a greater teammate. So enthusiasm plays a big role in how we're going to deal with what's to come. And the reason it's so important is because we have no freaking idea about what's to come. There's no way we can know. Every pundit is contradicting every pundit. Every expert is contradicting every expert. We don't know if this COVID-19 will mutate. We do not know what the effect of the economy will be. We do not know how we're going to recover. But we still can control our own issues, our own resources, and how we will behave, with a very ultimate goal, and that is to achieve a certain form of calmness. I'm going to just turn for a second. Can I introduce you? He doesn't want to be introduced, but my son happens to be my director and my co-producer and editor, and I'm just going to peek at a little note, if that's okay. Yes, that's right. I'm also wanting to open up this conversation to you folks. So I want to make sure that you could ask me things while I'm talking just by typing in. I see all your little notes already. Thank you all for being here, first of all. I will be, by the way, posting this on my YouTube channel so that if there is anything you enjoyed hearing and want to see it again, you'll be able to see it on my YouTube channel. Now, I did also ask for questions prior to coming on the show, and I did receive a few, and I want to address them now. One dealt with everyone looking for work at the same time once we are out of quarantine and once businesses begin to open. How are we going to distinguish ourselves so that we can find the work? And this is a good time right now to literally reinvent yourself. Think about it. The entire planet is reinventing themselves at this moment. So I'm almost thinking that rather than give you some sort of tips for looking for work, you can find that on internet. Just Google best ways to write resumes, best ways to look for work. They're all there. What I want to give you, though, is a bit of a philosophical underpinning on how you should carry yourself through all of this. And that is, you must feel confident that you too can reinvent yourself right now. Maybe, in fact, instead of looking for work, you're creating work. That's something that so many people really desire. They really do desire to be their own boss, their own entrepreneur. I know I've worked for a system for 23 years, and I didn't regret it, because you can't have any regrets. They're worthless. But it never felt as good as being on my own, like I am now and like I was 20 years ago when I first started my business. Actually, 40 years ago when I first started my business. Yipes, that's a long time. 40 is just a very long time, but it's true. So think of this as an opportunity to recreate yourself, to hopefully, by the way, maybe things will go very smoothly. Maybe things will really just fall into place. As I said, we have no frickin' idea. There's no way we can know what this is going to be like. The one thing, though, I am certain we must do is narrow the gap of crap. Because right now, we have been given so much crap to digest, each and every one of them contradicting the other. How do we narrow the gap of crap? I can tell you there's only one way: to be true to yourself, to develop a sense of patience and calmness, and to do so not just with words, but with words that ring true to your soul. And I never forget having Thomas More on my show. Thomas wrote 2 classic books. He wrote The Care of the Soul and The Dark Night of the Soul. And he did something interesting, and I can't recall if it was in his book or if it was in the conversation we had. But he described the difference between soul and spirit in a very unique way, and I want to share that with you. The spirit is sort of the external thoughts that we have that seem to, I don't want to say transcend necessarily anything, but they are as if we are dealing with something outside of ourselves. And the soul is something that is within ourselves. And I want to, again, encourage you, I see John Kay and Bob Siegel and Robert Zuckerman and Farah Kaufman and Eileen. I want to encourage all of you to participate, to be a part of this. If I could almost stop talking now and watch your questions as you comment there, I would just love that. That would be ideal for me. So I'm going to slow down a little bit, let everybody gather their thoughts. I see Java John here. Robert Zuckerman. May I say something about Robert Zuckerman? Robert Zuckerman is one of the greatest photographers of our generation. He is amazing. He wrote a book called Kindsight, and I had him on my show. Here is a man that is dealing with physical situations now that go beyond anything you can imagine. He's been bedridden for months and months, and yet, believe it or not, he's working on another book. The book he's working on is actually, while lying in a hospital bed, he's taking photos of people who are messaging him. And it is a most gorgeous, gorgeous book. And it's something that I know. And if you haven't yet picked up a copy of Kindsight by Robert Zuckerman, you will relish it. You will cherish it. And again, I do want to give you a chance. Anne Marie, I see, is here. Marilyn, I see you are here. Please talk to me. Sean, feel free to ask me different things. I have no idea, but I know. Hi, Mita, how are you? Yeah, Mita, that's what I was talking about. I just see a response here that loves my take at looking at this time as an adventure, but also feel this is a challenge or an opportunity. I agree with that. Again, I would lean more to the opportunity rather than the challenge. If, by the way, what I say is what works for me. If you find that you get more motivation by looking at something as a challenge rather than an adventure, then by all means, remember, the goal here is to bring out the best within you. How you personally do that is up to you. I was giving these examples of what worked for me and how I was able to look at things and deal with things. But thank you, Mitra, for that, because again, I do think there are many other ways that people can view things and do things. And one of the things I've also want to tell you about is something my son Eli brought up. He was dealing with a bit of writer's block. Hi, Althea, nice to have you here. And he came across a wonderful piece with great script writers who were giving advice. And one of them that he brought to my attention was the advice of Jordan Peele, the great director and comedian who wrote Get Out. And Jordan had some wonderful advice, and it was this. When we are in these blocks, and I consider the situation we're in to be a pretty big roadblock, when we're in them, we have to follow the fun. Now, it's difficult oftentimes when we are barraged by news that is so disheartening all the time to follow the fun, but you can do it. You can. No matter what you have to do, you can follow the fun. I see Gregory here. Thank you, Gregory, for joining us. And when you follow the fun, what happens is you become much more productive. And that's been proven over and over. The great Wayne Gretzky said it best, I think, when he was asked, how long do you practice to be that great? And he said, I've never practiced a day in my life. All I've done was play and have fun. The great Roger Federer in tennis experiences the exact same thing. With grace and with attitude, he goes out there because it's fun. Even the quarterback, Tom Brady, who by now, with his championships and his rings and being the greatest of all time, in his 40s, he is still playing one of the most brutal sports because he does so because it's fun. I have another question here, and that is, how can we change the way the medium is, how the media shift is going to happen? I think something's going to come out of this pandemic that's going to cause the media to shift. Already, we see this happening. For instance, just yesterday, Joe Rogan, one of the great podcasters, he already signed $100 million deal with Spotify because he's an alternative to the mainstream media. And I'm very sorry. My brother just joined online, and he just noticed how much time I had to spend to get my hair to look good. It's a wise guy. I'll have to take it up with him a little bit later. But yes, it does take me a long time to even get my minimal amount of hair to look this good. But so I think when we change the media, I'll give you a perfect example. I literally stopped my subscription to I'll say it, the Los Angeles Times. I could not stand that media. Now, I do love the fact that I read the Wall Street Journal now. That's a media that I like. I think we have to become more selective in what we choose. And when they see that, people notice. As I said, people love to listen to Joe Rogan. Spotify realized that, said, listen, we're going to make you a deal. And if you come to us, you'll be able to do your show. And that's a form of new media. New media is important. I want to just catch a little something from a friend in San Diego. Oh, Paul. Paul was a military man, one of the great pilots, and became a phenomenal FedEx pilot as well. And he said that his motto was, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And he agrees that that was true. So you see, in all walks of life, if in the military you can say, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right, you've got to look at that. When you feel that you are in a form of depression, you can't, by the way, let's just time out for a second with depression. I love it. When this, by the way, I want to comment about Donna. She says, goodness, your very thoughts have been mulling around in my mind for days. I want to tell you something, Donna, and everyone else. You know, the two things when I did my show Between the Lines and when I do my show now, Just Between Us, and by the way, I'm going to be doing my podcast as well. And by the way, one more thing, secret for you guys, I am a third of the way through my book. I was half of the way, but had to start rewriting it, so I'm a third of the way. But I see Donna saying that these thoughts have been mulling around in her head. I've always had a theory about that, Donna, and that is the two most important things that I got out of everything I read, over 1,000 books while doing Between the Lines, were when two things happened. Either the things that I had mulling around in my mind were reinforced by what I read, or I did all of a sudden get an epiphany of something new. So I think that greatest forms of learning fall under those two categories. When the things that are mulling around in your mind get reinforced, that is powerful because it makes you again know that you weren't alone out there. And the other, of course, is if you do learn something new. But the truth is, of almost everything I've read, there were a few things that came out where I learned something new, but most of it was reinforcing the things that I've already learned. Some of the new things I'll never forget. In fact, I'm honored that I've become friends with Robert Greene, and he's the fellow who wrote the 48 Laws of Power. When I first read that book, The 48 Laws of Power, the first thing I said to him was, I broke all 48 laws of power. So I did learn from that. Wait, I've got a little note here. Yes, I wanted to talk a little bit about depression. There's no doubt that depression is something that so many people are now experiencing. And folks, I see. I'll go. You know what? I'm going to go with my viewers first. Let me go with my viewers first. Let me just scroll down a little bit. Denny, good. I agree with Donna. Oh, thank you, Denny. That's wonderful. And I want to see Bob. What is Bob's? Dealing with lockdown life, it's hard to find. Oh, Bob, that is something. Bob is questioning this. He says, I have spent so much time dealing with lockdown life, it's hard to find time to be creative. I don't know if I'd call it a tip, Bob, that I have, but I do have an approach to it. And some of it is that I first of all began to relax. One thing my plan was, when I had all this downtime, was to do what you see so many people doing. They're organizing their house, they're baking bread, they're making cookies. As my son, I shouldn't put this on him, but he said, let's do away with all of them because we're not doing any of that. I found that as much as I wanted to do all of that, I didn't have the energy or the real desire. I was bummed out by this lockdown life. Fortunately for me, being locked down is not as big as a problem for others because I find no better place than to be with my son, my wife, and my children in my own home. So I really hadn't had that problem. But the creativity I did have a problem with, and I would love to discuss that. As I said, when my son Eli was in the midst of a real writer's block and he wanted to get this script done, simultaneously, I hope he doesn't mind, he and I were going through a depression. And he found, as I mentioned earlier, that he took the advice of the screenwriter Jordan Peele, who said, look for the fun. So when you are in that creative mode and you're finding yourself blocked, possibly look at some of the things that bring you fun and allow that to snap the creativity. Let me give you an example of some of the things I started doing. I wanted to wake up every morning and work out. Now, I found that I could do that, but I couldn't do it every day. The depression sunk in a little bit. So I started to watch. The first thing I did was watch all the reruns of Friends. And that's how I started my day. I'd have a little breakfast, watch the reruns of Friends, and then go and work out. Then, when I worked out, I got a bit more energy. I have a lot of lack of energy now because of part of the treatment I still have to go through for my, excuse me for a second, folks, for my what I call cancer in the prostate, is they have to block my testosterone, which, by the way, truly depletes energy. So finding energy is an interesting thing, but it does spur creativity. One of the things I like to do that really spurred creativity is I sit in my backyard, I will have a drink and a cigar and listen to music. And music, for some reason, truly stirs me. I've been writing down words that I find very poetic and meaningful, the lyrics of so many songs. A perfect example was the one I was thinking of the other day by Leonard Cohen. And this applies to, again, if you're stumbling with creativity, Leonard Cohen says, act like you want to be, and soon you'll be the way you act. I think that's, again, some good advice to get out of that block. But for me, it really was a good cigar, a drink, and listening to music. I found that in a sense of solitude without anyone around me, a chance to let the lyrics wash over me. And so many of the great songwriters are the true poets of our time. Listen to the music that maybe you enjoyed when you were younger, or better yet, even some of the new music. I'm also seeing that people like Donna gets her energy from a friend. And I think that is some of the best ways you can do it. You have some good friends, good family. Don't forget, it's not going to be the government that gets us out of this. It's going to be the relationships we have. If we have good friends, good family, good associates, whether they're with us, whether we're on the phone. I have at least 3 or 4 conversations with my best friends every week. They spur me on. They really give me when I'm down, they won't let me stay down. They insist that, Barry, you've got to share stuff. You've got stuff that you want to bring out. Get off your ass and do it. And sometimes I hate that old thing, just do it. It's too cliche. But some form of action, even the slightest form of action taken before you're ready. Don't forget, if you wait for the muse before you take action, you could be waiting for eternity. Take a little action. Any action that'll make you feel better will always spur on creativity, whether it's the action of talking to a good friend, a good family member. That is always the way to do it. And I just think that's a phenomenal way of developing this. And also, I should say ask more often. Okay, I will. I like Donna's. Yes, she agrees. That's very cool. Oh, and a little Harry Potter, I see. The music scores. Yes, anything that gets your mojo going is what's great. I want to also take this time to tell you that, again, all my podcasts are available on your podcast providers, whatever they may be, from Spotify to Google to iTunes. They're there. I hope you will tune in. And my shows, we will, as I said, we're going to post this on YouTube, and we're going to also create new YouTube product. And I'm going to also be posting some of my evergreen Between the Lines as podcasts, but I plan to do some new live podcasts as well, which we will record and also share on YouTube. So I want to be able to let you know that. And I love, again, seeing the support that people agree with this, because, this is one of those times, rarely in history, that we are all in this same boat together. Now, there is a possibility that some of us may be on the upper deck, while some of us are on the lower deck, but we're in this boat together. And my son loves to use these words, and I think they are so true. We are all simply connected, but in a very complex way, I should say. About my book, I mentioned that before. I have not written a book yet, but I am about a third through my first book. I plan to finish that during this time. But as I said, like I mentioned before, I too suffer a little bit from the anxiety and depression. By the way, I want to separate those two things. I think there is an important distinction, even though they are close to the same coin. Depression and anxiety are a little different, and it's kind of good to know where you stand. Depression, for the most part, is what you regret you haven't done, while anxiety is you are not sure what you should be doing and regret that you're not taking action. So and I'll be discussing that in my book and further podcasts and things like that. I guess Althea is really Jim. Nice to meet you, Jim. What else do I want to say? And again, please feel free to ask me anything. I'm going to take one more look at my notes. I don't want to keep anyone here beyond what I have to say. I will tell you, though, a little something that I did in college. I had a number of roommates, and one of them actually wasn't a roommate, was a friend of my roommate, and we formed what we called the Triumphant. We were three guys that did things together, and we were a bit of rabble-rousers. We were, at that time, I guess you could say we spun up a little dirt on the campus that made us the bad boys, so to speak. But we actually had a motto, and I think the motto, and this will be the only time you'll hear me really curse, but it was part of the plan, and that was, we always said, to give respect, then you can demand respect, and then if that doesn't work, fuck them if they can't take a joke, because that's the situation we're in right now. We almost have to look at this as a joke. Because if we look at this in too serious of a manner, we will lose our minds. You know, they say there are no atheists in foxholes, but you know what they're definitely in foxholes? I'll tell you what, there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of dark humor, there's a lot of black humor, but humor, man, that is something that will get you through life beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you can find, and in fact, I'm going to share something with you. Everyone seems to like my cursing. Okay, I'll be very careful, but I'll throw in a few more if it does happen to pass my way again. But humor, I want to tell you about humor because humor is the saving grace, and it is in these times not only the way to get through them, but yes, Barry was a rebel rouser. I will share many things I did do in college. I protested, spoke at the Capitol, and got a lot of trouble, and it's kind of funny, and I know people. I just see there that this is like living in Groundhog's Day, the movie. I have to check. I don't know about you guys. I have to wake up every day and check my phone to see the day, the date, the time. What is a weekend nowadays? I have no clue. I try to do certain things different on the weekend, but I end up the same thing. Now I'm into Seinfeld instead of Friends because I went through all of Friends. And my wife turned me on to NCIS. Yes, I know that's an old guy's show, they say, but I love it. I find Gibbs to be the toughest man on the planet, and I want to be with him. Very good, Cindy. Don't let what you can't do keep you from what you can do. Good thinking. That is a great line, and I've heard it, and I love it. And I do think. Let me see. What time is it? I've gone over a half hour. I wasn't expecting to do that. I will kind of wrap this up in a way by saying, one, how grateful I am that so many of you joined me today. I will be posting this on YouTube. I will keep you posted about my book, my podcasts. Many of you, if you don't subscribe to my newsletter, I always post things on my Facebook page. I always tweet them. I always will I will email them. If you don't get my email newsletter, please feel free to just drop me a line at barry@barrykibrick.com. And if you also like what I'm doing and want to help support, you can become a patron. It's very simple. Just go to my website, barrykibrick.com. You'll see a little button there. Just click it. You could become a patron for as little as $2 a month. It really does help, and you can go as crazy as you want. But I really think a lot of $2 patrons will do me just fine, and I think that it would be I'd be honored to have that type of donation as $2 a month. So I told you about music, and I'm going to end this with one of the... Yes, I still have the photos of me streaking while I was at Rutgers. So, but I am not sharing them with you. Of streaking? All right. I was one of the original streakers. Yes, I know this sounds... Of course, it's my brother who brings this up. My brother loves to embarrass me. I could tell you that all the time. People, look how young they are. What's streaking? Well, streaking at the 70s was when you took off all your clothes and would run through either the campus or a football game. And I did something that I thought would be a true challenge. I was a junior at the time. No, I was a sophomore at the time. And it was the new freshman orientation. So all the parents were at Rutgers, and they had them all in the main commons dining room that seated about, I think it was over 3,500 people. And my friend Jim Roney and I decided that, Kibrick, you struck before in the quad. Why don't you really be bold and do a streak through the entire Rutgers Commons with all the parents and freshmen seated there? Well, how do I not accept a challenge like that? But Jim, I said, listen, the streak, it's 3,000 people. It's about a 200-yard dash through this commons. I'm going to be naked, and if I was in great shape, I'd have jogged, but I wasn't, so I was going to run as fast as humanly possible. And I said, just be sure that you're on the other end of the door so you can let me out with my clothes. Got the signal, take off, streak through the commons. In fact, at that time, my girlfriend's parents were there as well. Sometimes you do have to wonder how much is up there. But the truth of the matter is, as I make the streak through, Jim Roney is laughing so loud that he closed the door and leaves my clothes on the outside. So I can't get out because it was one of those doors. Make a long story short, I have to streak back through the entire commons, go outside to the public, go all the way around Rutgers' main campus, pick up my clothes on the outside of the door, and that was the end of my streaking. So, yes, you do see another side of me. There's many more I will share with you. If you enjoyed this, I hope I will do it. But I do want to leave you with something. As I said, music really soothes my soul. And one of the, in my opinion, the greatest rock group, not individual group like the Beatles or the Doors or whatever group you want to think of. Obviously, I'm dating myself. No, I did not get arrested, by the way. But one of the classic groups that the greats got together, they were Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, George Harrison, Roy Orbison, and Jeff Lynne, and they were the Traveling Wilburys. And as we depart today, I want to leave you with these words by them, and it goes like this. Well, it's all right, even if the sun don't shine. Well, it's all right, everything will work out fine. Well, it's all right, 'cause we're going to the end of the line. I'll see you folks at the end of the line. It's going to be a bright new future. We're going to make it that way. And stop watching the news. Just click on a little blurb in case they found a cure already. That's all I do. Get into old comedies, make yourself laugh, make yourself feel good, and keep those huge smiles on your face. I'm Barry Kibrick. It was such a joy and pleasure having this time with you all. Till next time, I love you.